My wife has become a militant vegan and I can't stand it anymore. My wife became a vegetarian 3 years ago during the lockdowns. When she told me she wanted to change her diet, I told her that was fine, but not to expect me or the kids to follow along with her. I would not expect her to cook me meat, and if we were eating together, I would make sure to either cook vegetarian or make sure to cook meat separately from everything else. This worked well. There was literally no problems until this year. At first, it started with her getting a bit preaky about things. She would start to tell me or the kids how unhealthy meat was, how cruel the industry was, yada yada. She went vegan soon after and it has been a living hell since then. A few months ago, out of nowhere, she told me that animals products would not be allowed in the house at all. Obviously, she does not just get to say that. I brought up the fact that she agreed that the rest of the family would not have to follow her diet. Our kids are teens and I'm a fully grown adult. She had a tantrum, a full-on toddler tantrum when I told her this. Now, she chastises me and the kids whenever she sees us eating meat. She tried to get the kids to watch documentaries with her and has meltdowns when they don't want to. She got into a fight with her dad and refused to go to his birthday celebration because they refused to only have a vegan cake, but offered to buy a second one so she could join. I don't know what happened. I've tried to talk to her about this and she loses her cool with me every time. Her insults just get more bizarre. She calls me and the kids Nazis and says we are supporting the modern-day Holocaust. The kids are absolutely tired of it. Our son makes fun of her behind her back all the time now, and I'm less and less inclined to stop him. Our daughter refuses to be around her now and tells me when she moves out of the house that she will never talk to her mom unless something changes. I just want my wife back, not whatever activist monster she's become. It boggles my mind that someone would act towards her own family like this. Has she accomplished anything besides alienating them? You don't convert people this way. But people that act like this are so convinced of the righteousness of their position that the only reason you wouldn't think like them is because you're selfish and evil. She may not have gone as far as accusing them of this yet, but be sure it's on the horizon. She did call them Nazis, which is ironic because the Third Reich actually had quite a progressive animal rights platform, which is ironic in and of itself because fill in the rest yourself. It does seem like the most fascistic people are the most likely to throw around the label Nazi. It's classic projection. In my 51 years on this planet, I have never seen the word fascistic. I had to look it up because at first I thought it was made up. Nope, it's a real word. It's silly, but really cool to learn a new word. Thanks. It's because it's a little bit redundant. The word fascist is already an adjective, so it works in the same context. However, I think fascistic implies more of a specific quality versus an overall quality. I think it's mainly because we are taught from elementary school that the Holocaust was the objective mother of all evils. It's treated with an almost religious significance, while other very similar events aren't even in most people's vocab. I think calling people Nazis has more of an inverse correlation with intelligence than anything. The rest of us eventually figured there are other evils in the world, and the Nazis are just a particularly recent and overused example. The people who use Nazi or even fascist to describe mainstream politicians probably can't even describe the tenets of those ideologies in meaningful detail. Yeah, the most recent example that we are taught about in the mainstream, what Soviet Russia did to their own people in more recent years after WW2, some could argue was way worse. I can get what I want by calling people Nazis. Cool, I'll call people Nazis whenever they disagree with me. Also, Hitler became a vegetarian in 1938 for medical reasons. He publicly embraced it in 1942 because apparently it played well in the Third Reich. And of course, obligatory Hitler was a vegetarian. That's an oft-repeated myth. See book written by his personal chef on his favorite dishes: turtle soup, liver dumplings, etc. I grew up in Germany. What I was taught, supported by Google, was that he wasn't a veggie until 1938, meaning he was a meat eater and a gourmet one at that during most of his rise to power. That began in the early 1920s with a failed coup. By the time he was put on a veggie diet by his doctor in 1938 for medical reasons, he was at the pinnacle of his power and had already surrounded himself with servants and loyal staff. Thus, what his personal chef said is true. So is his vegetarianism post-1938. Hitler didn't like it. At first, he kept it a secret, but when it came out, it played well with the German Nazis who supported him, and he publicly embraced his vegetarianism in 1942 when the wheels were already coming off the Nazi genocide and World War train. Guess when you're engaged in massive genocide and waging the worst war of the 20th century, it can help your public image if you're perceived as good to animals. Tell me at least the chronic constipation and flatulence parts are true. Oh yeah, no, he farted all the goddamn time. If you haven't listened, I highly recommend the podcast Behind the Bastards. It's all about the embarrassing, pathetic, uncool sides of historical figures who committed atrocities or helped commit them. The first episode is called Farting Hipster Hitler. Excellent content, probably my favorite non-fiction podcast of all time actually. Pretty hard to take them seriously when you find out just how cringy and pathetic they were behind closed doors. For some people, it's not about accomplishing things, it's about feeling righteous. To feel righteous, you need an enemy. To feel righteous, you need an enemy. Damn, that's deep. That's what she said. That's so on point. Going full-on Preaky and Karen-level activist all of a sudden usually means the person is slowly descending into depression and losing their sense of self, worth, and identity. So in order to feel they are enough and worthy, they latch themselves onto an extreme cause where they get to be righteous. The more they are losing their sense of worth, general contentment, core happiness, and mental health, the more preaky and hysterical they become towards being righteous and imposing their righteousness on everyone else. It's a sign of depression, a chronic stream of feeling insecure, unsafe, unenough, alone, or sad. It means they perceive their new reality as systematically oppressive and unfair to them. It's a cry for help. Some fundamental sense of normalcy, adequacy, and happiness has been destroyed for some reason at some point, which has replaced itself with an obsessive sense of righteousness. This explains a lot. Ever since I moved out, I barely see my mom anymore, but she's now a super religious zealot that believes every new president is the Antichrist. I really appreciate this comment. I wish my younger self could have read this. My father was a born-again Christian when I was 15. It was an experience. Invulnerable people, an out-of-our-control event like a global pandemic can trigger exactly this kind of pathology. The woman needs help. I'd suggest therapy, but someone who thinks of their immediate family as literal Nazis over rejecting veganism may need more intervention than that. Cult deprogramming comes to mind. I wish people like this woman who throw around Nazi as an insult for things that have nothing to do with Nazism or even fascism would realize how utterly rude and disrespectful it is to the victims of actual Nazi Germany, their families and descendants. The shocking lack of basic humanity in making such comparisons is absolutely nauseating. This is the answer. She needs counseling. OP said she started doing this at the beginning of the COVID lockdown. I think she felt lonely and isolated after being cooped up behind closed doors, afraid of dying and losing her loved ones for so long. This creates a fundamental sense of not having control over your life and develops the victim complex in some people. Some of those who go militant vegan, screaming for helpless animals, have gone through deep feelings of helplessness themselves. When she screams at others not to victimize cows, she is screaming at uncontrollable circumstances not to victimize her. She is identifying with the victimized animals. She needs to have therapy therapy only for long enough to see this, and then needs to experience things that make her stop seeing herself as the victim. She needs to feel powerful, in control, supported, and surrounded by loved ones. She needs her sense of safety, security, and power back. Being a vegan is kind of like a new age religion to some, I guess. It's treated as an all-encompassing thing and very much seems to be a religion. My ex-BFF is a vegan and was cool at first but is exactly like OP's wife. She started posting stuff like God should allow Hitler into heaven. He fried people and we fry meat. Like, I don't know how that makes any sense, but okay. There was a post on some other sub by a guy whose girlfriend was a vegan Nazi. She wanted him to get rid of his cat because cats are killers and Mr. Huggles has got to go. Not making this up. Not trolling. I don't think the guy was trolling either. This was in one of the relationship subs, or am I the arsehole? After I lost half my family to Donald Trump's bullshit propaganda on Facebook, I'm not surprised. This woman got herself into a vegan cult social media bubble in which doesn't allow people to disagree, and now is brainwashed to the point that she has alienated her from her husband and children. Yeah, this screamed public Facebook group once it got to the part of the temper tantrum. I wonder how many TikToks of a sad animal in a dirty enclosure this woman has watched. Vegan fanaticism. To be clear, not all vegans have this propensity. I grew up vegetarian and have started eating meat as an adult. So many people, like 3/4 of my human network, are vegan. I'd say most people aren't like this. It's just the fanatics that get the most attention. It's the whole movement that spreads this way of acting. Every woke thing these days thinks it's okay to force shit on people, and if you disagree, you are a bigot piece of shit. I watched a video where a guy ordered pizza and while eating it, found a morsel of cheese in his sauce. He called the place, and when it was confirmed they used cheese, he threw his $1,000 phone across the room. WTF. It's not okay to eat animal products, but it's okay to act like a psychotic, violent person. Instead of not eating there again, it was straight to violence and blaming everyone else. Maybe make your own food if morsels make you lose control like that. All these movements telling people not to be judgmental, but the moment you simply don't agree completely, you become the devil. And they find it okay to insult you and compare you to a Nazi. Your wife needs to come to her senses or you need to leave her. It's dangerous being around someone who will force their beliefs on you but will not even consider your own. I used to frequent a sub which was a support community for family members of QAnon fanatics. The heartbreaking stories of people turning on their loved ones over Q, wrecking their lives, burning bridges. It is tragic. But the stories that stood out to me the most were the ones that detailed how their Q loved one was able to be deprogrammed. It typically wasn't through interventions, ultimatums, divorce, or anything intense. In fact, confronting the person about the fact that they were in a cult was entirely unhelpful most of the time. But the successful deprogramming stories usually included the cult member getting distracted by a different engrossing topic like K-drama, K-pop, cooking, fitness, romance novels. Honestly, anything that they could put their energy towards while also joining a community of like-minded people. One man outlined a story of his father deprogramming his Q mother by cutting off her access to Q content and signing her up for a bunch of online forums and magazines centered on her old hobbies of opera and cooking. One girl said that her mom got deprogrammed by becoming obsessed with K-pop and joining the netizen community. In short, I think sometimes people want to belong to a greater community while also investing in something extremely interesting to them. So if you're not ready for divorce, try not to talk about veganism at all, but maybe start some new extremely engrossing hobbies with your wife. Reflect back on the woman she used to be, the things that used to interest her, and maybe introduce those elements back into your home. Heck, try to turn her into a Disney adult or join an adult dance class. It may sound silly, but oftentimes people get swept up in cults because they are bored and lonely. Best of luck, OP. Thanks for watching. If you would like to see the original post, the link is in the description below. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more videos.